This is Justin. I just wanted to begin this episode with a trigger warning. We do discuss heavy topics in this episode, including suicide, depression, abuse, trauma, and other heavy subjects. So please join us and listen if you feel comfortable with it. But if any of those things are going to be particularly triggering or difficult, we understand and want you to be aware. So thank you. All right, we're recording. Howdy ho, neighborinos. I don't know. This is Justin, and it's episode. Yeah, that's Flanders from The Simpsons.
Oh, see, I've never watched that.
You know who Flanders is, though, from memes and stuff. He's the guy with the mustache who was their neighbor, who's like a really good, upstanding Christian, and he's almost really? Too wholesome.
Okay.
Like, I'll get that for you. Like, just he's just like, I sometimes feel like Flanders, especially in response to some of the comments we've got about, like, I don't know how many times I've been called kind and like, what a good person you are and all this stuff. And like, it makes me feel so Flandersy that I kind of want to go out and like trip an old lady trying to cross the street or so. I would never do that. I know I would never do that, but I'm just saying.
I know, because you're so kind.
Stop. You're making it worse. No, but like, I'm not kind. I'm a seriously. Stop. No, stop.
Said literally no ever.
Okay, you know what? Okay. Anyway, enough of Flanders. That's what Howdy Ho Neighborino comes from. And yes, it's very awkward. Welcome to episode 4 of I Pray You Put This Journal Away. I'm Justin. I'm joined here by my wife and helpmeet, Julia. What does helpmeet mean, by the way?
It means that I was created to meet your
kind of
needs.
An awkward.
Yeah.
It's like you started a sentence but didn't finish it. It would be like, I'm going to make a new word. And you're like, what word are you going to make? And I'm like, I know. And everybody's like, what did he say? What is he going to say? I don't know, but the new word is I know. And it's like help. That's what help me is like. It's like, it doesn't go anywhere. It's just like, help me. What?
Yeah, I remember being given, I think that, because the Pearls did the whole like help me books, you know? And I remember that there was the, I think, created to be his helpmeet was for the women. And then for the girls, it was, I believe, preparing to be a helpmeet.
I just am curious. I'm sure people will tell us what the word means and where it came from, but like, it's such a bizarre one to me.
I am pretty proud of myself because there was so much stuff that I was just like, this is BS. Like,
when you were a kid?
Yeah. Like stuff like the Pearl, the Pearls books. Because we had a lot of their content in our house.
Okay.
And
you were just very firmly like, yeah, this is baloney.
I was very much like, this sounds so boring. I have no interest in being a helpmate.
Okay, well,
I want to get married.
Meanwhile, back at the farm, meanwhile, I'm at the farm. I'm reading every crazy thing ever written going, oh, I need that. Oh man, I'm definitely not good at that. If somebody had handed me a book that was like a deep dive from another religion, I would have been very likely at that time to been like, what? Because I had this very literal view that the outside world was definitely bad, and it was obvious that it was bad, and that guys inside the church that made a lot of sense were good. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have that discernment that you had. I remember one time going to like an air show event with my family, and we were looking for a way to get some shade. So we went into this one tent where someone was leading like new age spiritual meditation kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was sitting there next to my mom and some others. We literally just wanted to get out of the sun. And she was like, breathe in, feel your body, feel the sensation of cool water going from your toes I hope this is actually working for everybody listening to it. I hope
everybody just fell asleep.
I hope everybody feels relaxed as I'm giving this example. The water laps at your knees and you can feel the coolness of the water all up and down your leg. Like she was doing that sort of a thing. And I was there. I was into it. Mm-hmm. I closed my eyes. I was doing it and I was like, this is awesome. Mm-hmm. And then my mom kind of yanked on my arm and was like, let's get out of here. It's because she was watching literal demons enter my body and take over my soul as I was doing some sort of guided meditation thing, which was actually quite relaxing for me. And I liked it. Yeah, it was. But like, I think I was just very honestly non-discerning and I just had this open view of everything. So it's hilarious to hear that you were just like, oh yeah, bullshit. That's fake. That's a lie.
I don't really want to use the word discerning because there was a lot of things that I was super naive and like not discerning at all about. But I think there was a lot of things being taught that I was like, that's not what the Bible is saying. You know, that doesn't make sense. Or I just, nope. That doesn't sound fun.
So I
don't want to sit in a little chair and sew like all day.
So were you the actual rebel that I thought I was when I was writing in my journal? Because I was like, I'm so rebellious. I'm a bad boy all the time.
Reading your journal, you were way more. I was a little to be honest. Like I had no soul. You were over there so conscientious and like, oh my gosh, I need to get rid of my rebellious nature. And I'm like, we are going to haze this sibling for telling on us.
Hazing?
Not literal hazing, but word. We would do, silent treatment, stuff like that to each other if they ratted us out,
But I didn't really have like social anxiety naturally. It was just like, what I had was just sort of like 1-star reviews of my people interactions and was just trying to figure out how to get my score higher basically. Because I felt a certain way on the inside, but was really struggling with getting it out. So in my journal too, there's a lot of places where I talk about like, I am going to talk to this person, especially Jana, who I was like, I think it's fair to say I was pretty much madly in love with her from like 5,000 miles away. Like, every single week, my ritual was spend all week trying to figure out how to talk to her, build a solid game plan, military style. All right, men, first of all, we're going to go down here. We're going to shimmy down the side of church towards where the girls like to socialize. We're going to stand at the outside of the group, and then it's time to move in. We're going to move in, deliver a great joke. 2 of them are going to laugh. One of them's going to move to the left. One of them's going to move to the right, creating an opening. We're going to go in there, and then we're going to start off talking about music. We're going to be monitoring her actively with our eyeballs to see if she seems uncomfortable. If trace levels of discomfort are detected, then that's a wrap, men. It's time to Delta. We're out of there. Like that was kind of my, and then inevitably that was like Saturday night. Sunday morning, it would be like, all right, it's time to execute the plan. And then I would just be like, it's not going to work. And then just sort of, and I, when I say that this was every week, I mean it. It was every week for months.
I feel like on a certain level, that is everyone.
Yeah.
With a crush where, I mean, I had a crush on the same boy from like literally like 3rd grade till I was 16, I think.
Yeah.
And every time, his family would come over or things like that, I would be like, I'm going to be like talking and like these different things and be really funny. And then I would literally hide in the kitchen the entire night and not talk to him at all.
The thing is, I had aspirations of marriage. I thought that this was like it. Everybody else, like Josh had somebody that he was going to marry. My brothers seemed to have girls that they could talk to. And when I had one that was like perfect, like I was just head over heels, I painted a picture of her at one point. Privately, I just painted a picture. And it was just a portrait based on a picture I'd taken, but it was like very painterly. I think I made it look like watercolors, and I printed it and I kept it almost like my little locket photo. And it was just printed on 8.5 by 11. And I kept it in my little secret storage area. And one of my journal entries, which I may try to find here, I'm actually panicking because it's missing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And it might take me a minute to find it, but I would like to. It's gonna take too long for me to find it. I basically just said, I can't find it. I'm terrified that somebody found it, and like took it. And then later I'm like, oh no, it's back. So I think somebody did take it. Probably one of my siblings was being a little bit. So whoever did that, if you hear it, just you need to fess up. But yeah, no, I was like pretty heavy in love with her, and I couldn't talk. So to me, I feel looking back like I was probably giving off creepy vibes, but didn't really mean to. Just because I was so incredibly socially inept at some of the stuff. So, and at the same time, like I had other girls that liked me, that would, talk to me and kind of flirt and so on. And I remember just being like borderline annoyed and confused with most of them, and not knowing what to do with that either. It took me, it would probably take a girl 5-6 months of solid flirting with me for me to get the hint.
No, I mean, I know that there's been different points in our marriage where we've been like out and about, and I've like noticed like girls like looking at you or things like that, and you're just completely oblivious to it.
I found this section right here, which is kind of interesting, talking about like what I was like. I had read Romans 12:3, and I thought that I needed to assess myself and describe who I was in a very accurate, literal way. Because I was like, no BS. This is who I am, perfectly described. And I think too, the other thing was like, I was kind of obsessed with this because people were doing like personality tests and stuff.
Yeah.
And I always hated them because I was like, I didn't feel like they described me. I felt like they described how people saw me, like my mask or my outside, but they didn't really describe me inside. And so people would be like, oh yeah, you're totally blah, 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 whatever the letters are. I would just be like, well, that's what I am right now, but it's a work in progress and I might tune it later. And that's also not really how I feel.
Yeah.
So I was describing how I really felt, who I actually was. And I said, I am shy at first, but I warm up quickly with adults whom I look up to. I'm creative. I am absent-minded and very distracted at times. I am disorganized, which is funny because I was organizing the crud out of my journal, but I still consider myself disorganized because my practical organization skills appeared poor because I wasn't interested in doing certain things. Yeah. Like, for example, like cleaning my room was not fun and there's nothing interesting about it. And so I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
Unless I was forced to. And so I'd be told I was disorganized, even though the truth is, if I'm actively working on something, it's usually pretty organized. I am funny and I love to make people laugh. I can be too talkative. I am musically talented. I am artistic. I am an exhorter and I have mercy. I am a bit too image conscious. I am not super handsome. Sometimes I think maybe less than handsome, but it just may be my adolescent quirkiness making me think that right now. I am sensitive and emotional. I am not buff and strong, but I can hold my own, and I have very strong legs and good wind. You're laughing. Why?
You're precious.
No. I am not very athletic or super coordinated. I am not natural at using common sense well, but I'm not bad at it. I love people and anything people related. I communicate through my mouth mostly, as opposed to touching, giving, serving, spending time, etc. I am sensitive to others' feelings and thoughts. I am rash at times and can panic to a degree when things get dangerous, but I'm also very cool and calm in some things, but that's very deliberate. My strength is communication. I can be a complainer or slacker if I don't watch it. I need to work on my grumbling and diligence. I have conquered sarcasm, that is, hurtful sarcasm for the most part. And that was because I would often make jokes and stuff about people that I liked, thinking that I was being funny. And because I was so self-deprecating, I didn't think people minded me being deprecating to them in a fun way. Mm-hmm. And so I learned that that was not welcome. So I would just say things about people, like if someone was running slowly or something like that, I'd be like, all right, man, you're such a slowpoke, buddy, kind of a thing. Yeah. And just hurt their feelings so badly. But I thought I was being like affectionate. Like in my mind, I was almost expecting him to go like, I know, right? I can't get these legs moving fast enough. Gee whiz golly. And spoiler alert, that never happened. It was always like, what? Like, you. And I would just be like, oh. And so I saw that as my struggle with sarcasm, which was accidentally hurting people. And in my journal, too, there's also parts and pieces of it where I'm describing other people. And I thought that I was being really like detailed and like kind of humanizing and just how I saw it. But like it sounds like a Comedy Central roast when you read it. And I would be kind of afraid of posting this journal like raw without my commentary online or anywhere, because I'd be afraid that people would read some of the almost brutal things I used to describe other people and be like, what a dick. But like in my mind, I was like, this is like, I want people to have the perfect picture of this person. And like, I like them for these things. I like that they have quirks and things. Like I would describe one girl as like not having a neck, like a turtle or something like that was in its shell. And she had a big wart on her nose. And I was like, I liked that about her because I thought it made her interesting in a way. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I wasn't like, and I didn't see if I was like, that person is not attractive to me. I thought that was like just making a note about who I was and wasn't attracted to, not that this person was worthless or something.
Yeah.
So I really struggled with that. And I think I had kind of developed for myself this reputation of being a jerk. And that I hated that. I didn't want to be Mr. Thoughtless, who was just like, because you combine all these things, enthusiasm, self-consciousness, and image consciousness, borderline self-obsession, masking, which when you're not good at it can seem disingenuous, verbal fluency, meltdowns and sensitivity, and this sort of social awkwardness that led to things like sarcasm. You combine all those ingredients together and you get a person who's thinking about themselves all the time, who is smart and able to talk really well, who doesn't have a good grasp of their body. So when they're not interested in you, you think that they hate you or that they're bored of you. All these things, it's like smoothed out to where people didn't look at me and go, something's wrong. People looked at me and said, he's a jerk. Or they would just get the wrong impression of me. And that, I really have struggled with that my whole life, is that it's like a curse in a way, because I never felt seen. I never felt like people understood that my shell on the outside of misunderstanding gave an impression of a different human being than I felt like I was. And so it hurt deeply. And it's funny because, when I write in this journal, it's easy to get this impression of this sweet, soft, kind boy who cared about all this stuff. But then when you saw me out in the wild at this age, it was like, I don't know, just kind of annoying, like this annoying little dude. Is the impression that I got. I would get told things all the time, like with my hyperfocus and struggles, that like I would get told like, "You're so good at this. Why aren't you good at this?" Like, I've seen you when you try. I've seen you when you try hard. You can do an amazing job. You can go above and beyond anybody on like your work ethic.
Yeah.
They're like, why can't you just do that with your room? And it was, even if I wanted to, if I didn't have any interest genuinely from the pit of my soul in what I was doing, it was almost impossible to do.
Yeah.
I would almost have to lash myself with guilt and shame to motivate me to do anything that I wasn't genuinely interested in.
Yeah.
And that was really hard because it created this misunderstanding of abstinence and all that stuff. And that misunderstanding wounded me so deeply. I just felt like I was in the wrong robotic shell.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I know another common theme throughout this journal is you not feeling like you're a man or you're masculine enough because of, you not feeling very athletic. And yeah.
Or tough or sensitive was a word that I hated for a long time. I resented that word. I mean, there are places in my journal where I describe my struggles with meltdowns where I say things like, I'm going to try to be better and more patient with people, even if I do think they're too loud, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I would just have such a struggle with it. We would go to air shows or things like that, which I loved, but like I was always the one just like freaking out more and just like really pushing those fingers deep into my ears to try to get the sound to go away. And I was also the one in my family who would just be really occupied with things like showers, just the sensations and the sounds. It was like a little amusement park for me. And I would often like take showers too long and stuff like that. I was always, as a kid, and this is all very kid stuff, but like, I realized I was doing this stuff into my like teens. It wasn't just 3 or 4-year-old me that was going around with wonderment watching a ceiling fan. It was like 16-year-old me would sit under a ceiling fan and just stare at it for a long time or something like that. And it's funny because I think a lot of these things are relatable to people on a certain level. It's just like maybe a more blown out version, I think, that I was experiencing. Yeah. Like it was like there weren't moments where I wasn't like this. This was just what I did all the time, every day.
Yeah.
The other one was like rehearsals and things like that. It's just funny to me that people are like, "Oh, you're so good at this podcasting thing. What a talent!" And I'm like, "Buddy, I will talk your ear off if I'm interested about something, and I will monologue, and you will have to like bring in the National Guard to get me to stop sometimes." And you're laughing because you know that I'm telling the truth. I love you. No comment. I can neither confirm nor deny. And I feel bad because people are like, well, let's hear your wife talk and stuff like that. And like, I want you to talk. I want to stop. But it's like it's a weird combination of things because I feel really natural doing this, but you don't feel as natural.
Yeah.
Doing this sort of thing.
Yeah. And I think most of why I've probably shared less is, I struggle with anxiety and it can be, it's hard for me to feel safe talking about things. And so, I thought probably 60 people were going to listen to this, when we first started. And and that was still a big, 60 people sounded like a lot.
Well, yeah, if you think of it in terms of real people, it's easy in like the YouTube age to be like, oh, he only has 7,000 or 700,000 views. Not even a mil. What a small timer. But it's like, that's a lot of people. 50 is a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I probably talked the most in the first episode before I had any idea how many views we were going to have. And then I think I've talked less and less each following episode because I think I'm, there's things I definitely want to talk about, but I think I'm also very protective of myself and the people in my life. And I usually open up to people that I know really well, and I know who I'm talking to. And so when it's like a lot of faces that I don't know, people that I don't know, it gets harder the more people are listening. But it has been really good having these conversations. And, as much as there's been anxiety, there's also been some breakthroughs for both of us, in the last couple weeks.
I've learned some things. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just kind of crazy.
I'll keep reading here. The traits thing where I'm describing myself. I said, I am learning personal integrity, but secret sin has always been my struggle. If you were just to read that to somebody with no context, if that was like the only thing, let's say that's how I opened the podcast. I said, here it is. Secret sin has always been my struggle. People immediately, their brains are going to be like, oh my gosh, this is the story of a guy who attended church with the Duggars who was on crack the whole time and he murdered somebody, and this is going to be really, really interesting stuff. But like the truth was, I was not doing any of those things. I was going through puberty and my secrets, and I was also really bored with school and not wanting to do assignments, and I was finding ways to like cheat here and there and do things like that. So yeah, I
also did that.
What, cheated?
Yes, cheated.
We're going to get our diplomas taken away, by the way. I hope you know that.
I think my mom still doesn't know.
Well,
she knows about two of my brothers because they let themselves get caught. But yeah.
There's something that I learned about, speaking of new things that we learned, related to the guilt and the obsession with your own sin, called scrupulosity, which is basically a term that describes OCD related to your own morality. And it's this like very compulsive, obsessive concern about sin and your own performance and standing. And I relate so hard to that. But I know a lot of other people did too. And that's a term that I'd never heard before. And I'm fascinated by it. And if we had been able to continue this podcast longer, I was hoping to find somebody who was an expert on this sort of topic.
Yeah.
Like this, and maybe religious trauma disorders, which is not it's not in like DSM-5. It's not a diagnosable thing, but some people have put together things that they're pushing for around religious trauma and some of the like hurt and pain emotionally and mentally that can come from this stuff. That's just like it's just like taking stuff that people think should be sort of like, we're all human, we're all people. I had one person comment, we're human beings, not human doings. And like, that's really easy to say, but like, I was definitely, this just didn't fit with how my brain worked. And I found that I was very, very vulnerable to scrupulosity or just this ethical, religious obsession. And, the downside for not obsessing on these things was very negative. I say, I am also learning to acknowledge and admit to being wrong. I am not good at this at all, but I am learning. Okay, this one's kind of interesting because when I say admit to being wrong, it was actually not admitting to being right was what it was. Like if I was in an argument, it was me being like, I have to stop, even though I know I'm right.
Yeah.
I have to because I had no problem with admitting if I was wrong. If I thought I was wrong, the problem is I would get in these arguments with people where I was like, you're super wrong. And I didn't want to stop the argument. The other person's exhausted. They're like, and I'm fresh. I'm ready to go. I'm like, oh, this is great. We're only on 0.6 of why I'm right. And they're just like, please just let me die.
Let me go with dignity.
Let me go. Why do you make me suffer in this argument? And so when I say I was learning to admit I'm wrong, it was almost like a wink, wink thing where I would very much be like, oh, this is unpleasant. And I would say something like, you know what? I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. Or I would just find some way to kind of end it. Yeah. And so that was my version of I'm not good at this. I have to admit to being wrong. I think that's actually kind of what I meant. So moving on to the next one. I said, I am Mr. Accuracy and Detail, but I still manage to be sloppy and disorganized. I choose my words with great, effort and precision. There, I'm being a little cheeky, a little cheeky with it. I said, whew, I feel like I'm being introduced to myself. I wonder if I am a likable guy. I mean, what would it be like to meet myself? Probably embarrassing. Then I went on to a part that I'm definitely going to read. And I said, I had a dream last night that somebody else tried to marry Jana, right now. I was devastated. Wow. Talk about sad. This other guy was given only a couple months to live, and he got Mr. Jim Bob's okay. I rushed to the wedding to find Jana, who was really sick as well, and Mr. Duggar. The other guy died before Jana married him, and this is kind of embarrassing. If anybody reads this without permission, I hope you get a bellyache or sprained ankle or something. I asked Mr. Duggar for Jana's hand in marriage, and he said yes. Don't laugh. It was just a dream. So I asked Jana, and she got to know me a little and said yes. So I went over to their house, and Jana, who strangely took on the form of different young ladies, but you know how dreams are. I feel like some psychological therapist expert YouTuber is going to do a breakdown of this and just pause every now and then and okay, so Sigmund Freud talked a lot about this. So I say took the form of different ladies, but you know how dreams are. She had to take some medication which had to do with burning something and consuming its ashes. Anyhow, she was really sick. She could barely walk. We were married. To be clear, it was just a dream. Clarifying.
Like some witchcraft mixed in here.
I don't know what's going on. We were married. It was just a dream in a pavilion in the snow. And I woke up. Weird, huh? Oh my gosh. I don't even know what to say about that. That was quite the journey. And I actually found the entry I referenced earlier about losing the painting. And I'll go ahead and read that. I know we're kind of jamming stuff in here and being disorganized. I hope that's okay. Just kind of just buzzing through this stuff because, I really wanted to get through this part and just kind of wrap it up.
Honestly, half our conversations are way more connect the dots, jumbly.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, thanks for jumping around with us. Anyway, journal. I am at a near panic. Had a little painting of Jana in my locked briefcase. It's gone. Either I took it out with some other papers accidentally and left it somewhere, or somebody has figured out my combination and taken it. I was going to tear it up because I don't want to be all crazy over her, so to speak. But if it gets out, what will it look like? Like I was infatuated. But now I'm better, even convicted on the matter. I gotta find it. If somebody has my combination, they probably read you too, journal. Oh no! 3 exclamation points. It is 10:19. It is 10:19, so I must search tomorrow morning. I just talked to Dad about Jana, and I was stuttering, seemed like my issue was just adolescent attraction. I still think I should stay on the track of Jana and not go elsewhere. I made a bad conversation with Dad. I gotta clear that up. I agree, I am going a bit too fast, but I don't consider it just another crush. I value it too much more than that. Crush or adolescent normal attraction is just so flippant. Yes, Jana's smile will sweep any guy off his feet, but I don't want to consider myself a mere victim of Jana's smile. If I am backing out of this thing with Jana. I have a few years ahead of me before I can start a purposeful relationship. I am backing out. I'm free. I honestly am over my head with Jana. It's awkward. I don't need any obligations to Jana. I don't know her. And if I get hooked, it's going to be to more than a smile. It will be the Lord's hand. Amen. I want to be able to look in other directions and at Jana without any awkward, well, I kind of got a thing going already perception. No, I don't even know what that means, by the way. No, I don't have a thing going. Lord, hold me to my commitment. Praise you. I feel so free. Over and out, Justin. Note. As I wrote today's entry, was convicted and changed my standing on the Jana issue. So I was back at it just immediately. It was like, never mind on that. You know, she's actually fun. And I do remember having one conversation with Jana, which I'll have to find in here. Because it was kind of the culmination of everything that I had been working on in terms of talking to her. And I don't think I'm going to find it in time.
It's okay. We can just take a second while you look for it.
I found it. Dear Journal, I'm not as bummed as I was on Friday, so I'm feeling better. I am encouraged to have had a good day today. Tomorrow will be good too. Church was at the Duggars today. It was good. I watched a Ray Comfort video. I hung around John David mostly. I had a good chance to have a conversation with Jana. It was kind of awkward at places, mostly my lack of conversational fluency, but it wasn't bad. It actually was a good conversation. I talked about the things I liked, hoping she would talk about the things that she liked. But she wouldn't. She just built on what I said. There is probably not a strong chance that she likes filmography or history and so on, but she would just converse about those things with me, leaving little room for her own interests. I thought that was kind of nice. We talked about music and types of music that we liked. She told me, but I couldn't quite hear from where I was standing. She's really a soft talker. I don't know if she's like, I haven't seen any clips or anything of her since then, really, but she was like extremely quiet. So like, I remember actually standing where I was standing, I was like kind of halfway between their kitchen and their like little prep area, because they had like a commercial kitchen that was like, so I was kind of standing in that doorway. I remember she was just kind of like, you know, just standing there comfortably. And she looked like I could see her mouth moving a lot while the kids were all running around. And, you know, she actually looked like she was kind of warmed up and just like talking for a while about the kinds of music that she liked. Yeah. But I was so frozen with not knowing what to do. I was like, I'm just going to nod my head and be like, yeah, wow. Yeah. Even though I couldn't hear what she said, because I just didn't, like, this was it. How many months had I tried to make this happen? And it was happening. So I was like, I can't blow it. So I was just like, oh yeah, wow. Okay. And I had no idea what she was saying. And from there, everybody started dispersing. Families were like, oh, load into the giant bus, everybody. We're going home. You know, and it was getting quieter at church. And more people were just kind of, you know, on couches talking, or kids were playing, or, you know, there's some stuff going outside. People were putting dishes away. Yeah. And I was just kind of just in the living room where she was after a conversation. And she just kind of quietly, slowly walked over to their grand piano and started playing Chris Rice. For those who don't know, Chris Rice was a contemporary Christian artist. That's how he started. But then he started doing crossover from Christian into secular music. And to this day, I snark at a lot of Christian music, a lot of contemporary Christian music, especially. A lot of it just feels like cover bands of real bands. Yeah. But that just talk about how much they want to, you know, go to Applebee's with Jesus. I'm snarking. There is a kind of a pseudo-romantic flair to a lot of their songs.
We both had artists that we thought were just a cut above.
Yeah. And Chris Rice, to this day, I actually think he's really good. Like, legitimately just good. And he was not a fundy artist at all. He was actually like not somebody that you would expect somebody like Jana to play or listen to. That was just sort of like, I thought that was very like nice, and like a moment of her kind of sharing with me what she liked. And so she went over there and just beautifully, she was really good at the piano, just beautifully started playing this gorgeous Chris Rice song. And I went over to the piano and listened. And I loved it. And then Mrs. Duggar came in and was like, Jana, we need you for some stuff. You know, need you to come over here and do whatever. You know, Jana, you're supposed to be doing this. And she got pulled away. And as she was getting up, though, it says, as she got up, I commented and said, that was Chris Rice. And she said, yes. And then a minute later, she came up to me and said, that's the kind of music that I like. After I told her the kind of music I liked earlier in the kitchen. Yeah. And I just drew a smiley face. And I said, she's a nice girl. Now, this other unnamed girl apparently was observing me talking to her in our moment at the piano, just kind of like, because this is one thing that I didn't have time to read over the course of the podcast, but I would have had we gone more episodes. And it was this journey I had with this other girl who, while I'm obsessing over Jana, liked me. And she was not shy at all. Bless her. Like, I kind of love her even now. Like, looking back, I'm like, I love you. Like, I wonder where you went with life, because you're a beautiful person. And you scared and annoyed me at that time. But like, when I look back, I just have such an affection for this fundamentalist girl who, you know, was just sort of this queen, honestly. And
That's awesome.
It was like the shackles of fundamentalism were just barely holding on to her with her personality. And man, she was after me. A lot. Most of it flew over my head, but after probably getting obvious hints, for months in a row, I started to get a little dim light bulb flickering above my head. I was like, I am detecting that this girl might like me. And so the kinds of things that she would do would be like, I would be at her house working on a project that, I'll just say it was one of Jim Holt's daughters. He's a public figure, right? And the reason I came across her so much was because we were working on a campaign for him. I was helping him on his lieutenant governor race at the time. And so I was over at his house working on that. And this girl would do things like come out of the bathroom or something like that in a totally different area of the house, like in her nightgown, and just yell across the house, "I'm in my nightgown. I hope nobody is around. Like, please avert your eyes because this is immodest." It was so great. And I was just like freaking out at that point. Like, oh! Like I was going full Hank Hill and just, freaking out. And she would do things like that. And I was like, that does not make any sense because I was in a different area of the house. And I don't know why. She must have a lot of anxiety and to have to declare her level of undress so loudly. It's like, man, she must be extra modest or something like that. And then she would do things like I would make a joke around her, or I would be like, "Go away, you're annoying me," like in like a little ribby kind of way. And she would roll her eyes at me and just be like, "Ugh, men." We were like 15 or 16. And I was just like, I remember I actually wrote about this in my journal and was just like, "Oh man, I don't know if I do like her because she does not seem to see me very accurately. I am not yet a full-grown man," things like that. And I honestly, she was great. And I remember even her sister at one point coming up to me and just being like, "Hey, if you were to stop ribbing her so hard, like that'd probably be great. Like, like the little sarcastic, snarky things you say, try saying something nice to her. Like it's okay." And I was like, "Thank you for your input," and I worked on it. And I tried to be nicer to her, and her sister came back later and was like, "That went really well. Like, good job." And so I probably had no idea at the time. And even now, probably underestimate whatever that was. I don't know if it was just a crush or whatever. She was just flirting with everybody. And I was just, I have no idea, but it was cute. So that girl though, she was observing me talking to Jana and I took note of that. And I wrote, "So did Jill." Jill cautiously walked up to us and said, "What are you guys doing?" And I responded with the yapping motion of my hand. And Jill seemed to be okay with that. And she walked away. And I said, her cautiousness was appreciated. I don't know why I appreciated it. I probably just felt like that was the right attitude to have. But
yeah, meanwhile, in my situation, I'm just getting like silently pissed at anyone who's like interrupting a conversation.
Yeah.
Because I would get so self-conscious. I would literally be unable to speak. Either I'd be unable to speak to the person I had a crush on, or I would be really rude to them because I was afraid that they were going to be able to tell that I liked them and that they were going to think I was silly. You're just so conscientious, though, in these. It's like, I appreciate her caution.
Because what's going to happen? She told me
Literally,
she played
what's going to happen?
She played a Chris Rice song, and was like, "That's the kind of music I like." And I was that like blew me away. I was just like, you know, in those Disney movies where there's like the cartoon character who, like the boy, and whenever the girl like winks at him or something, he just kind of goes, "Bull," and his like heart starts beating out of his chest.
Yeah.
And like maybe
and
butterflies
like, the stars and butterflies
over his head. And it's just like one of those goofy Disney moments.
Yeah.
That's how I felt when she played that song. Was cool with me standing there at the piano as she played it. It was a very non-fundamentalist, very beautiful song. And then
she kind of which one it was?
No. And I wish I did.
I bet if you went back and like listened
to some songs, I'd have a memory.
Yeah, I bet you'd be able to remember. I
feel like Chris Rice maybe did some instrumental projects at some point, and maybe she was doing one of those. But whatever it is, was gorgeous, and it was truly something that I liked too.
But those like little moments that you would get, you know, with your crushes growing up, you know, where it might be the smallest little exchange, but you just play it through your mind the rest of the week.
Oh, like, I was a king when she said that. Like she was like, that's the kind of music I like. Like in my head, I probably worked it over so many times that moment became like really dramatic. Like that's the kind of music I like. And then like
her hair's blowing in the wind.
Hair blows in the wind. A couple doves like fly off as she goes to the kitchen, you know, to help Michelle on whatever, you know, just fundamentalist dress flowing in the wind, you know, lilacs and perfume on the wind. That's like, and it was a nothing, you know, not a big deal moment, but like that was like a bomb drop for me. So the rest of the day, I guess I said John David and I just had a hoot, joking and ribbing each other the rest of the day. I could make John David laugh so hard. It's why I loved him. He was just so easy to make laugh. He wasn't complicated. He didn't have a ton of layers like Josh did. And we would just kind of talk and he was just a very easygoing guy, but I would make him like almost pee his pants laughing on a regular basis at church. And he was just great. I really enjoyed it. It's funny because like I don't know where any of these people are today. You know, I have fond memories of some of these people who might not be doing great things, or maybe they're not. I don't know what they're doing with their fame and their microphones now. But I liked them then, and these were kids, and it's okay.
Yeah,
it was beautiful in a lot of ways. And pure, the relationships that I had with people. So the next week clearly went straight to Dad and was putting together some very concrete plans for marriage.
I mean,
because I was like, hey, the train has left the station. She has said that that's the kind of music she likes. She pretty much just clearly fell in love with me at that moment, and we're ready to roll. Like, we are ready to rumble. So I'm like, okay, here we go. Marriage doesn't have to come after college, money and responsibility. You know, I can do this thing sooner than I thought. I was like, you know, it's maybe not that far off. Maybe it's closer than I thought here. Maybe I don't even need a college degree. You know, I think I'm actually doing fine. Maybe I could get into like sign making or, you know, some other things. I could start applying around. I'm writing about, and I'm paraphrasing all this so that I don't have to read the whole thing. But like, I was like, I need to talk to this man from the church, bare my soul to this man, and see if they have any financial advice for me or like money making, you know, provisional kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, I think I've got this. I might have to give up a few things that I like, you know, to fit with like the Duggars a little more. Cause I said I may even sacrifice some of my love of movies. And I was cool with that. I was like, maybe I should run for office. I don't know. Or maybe I shouldn't. And I was just kind of going through my head, like this checklist of all the stuff that I needed to do. And I even scheduled myself to get rebaptized to reaffirm my commitment to fundamentalism and whatever else. And there was like this intensity spike in the amount of work I did, because I was like, oh my gosh, It was like I landed on the moon for the first time. It was like, I've been trying and trying and trying and trying, and I landed.
How old were you during this?
16.
Okay.
I turned 16.
So you were saying rebaptized. How old were you when you got baptized the first time?
I got baptized like 3 times or 4 times.
Really?
Yeah, no joke. Because
I did not know that.
It was part of my guilt process, was thinking that stuff wasn't working in my life because I was not good enough, or I was clearly struggling with things. So I was like, the Holy Spirit just must not be in my heart at this point. So I should try it, but this time a little different. It was almost like troubleshooting a technical problem.
Okay.
You know, where you're like, did you try turning it off and then back on again? Or maybe your antivirus is conflicting with this and causing it to shut down. Like, I was trying to figure out why I didn't feel like I measured up to this stuff. And I felt very, very much like it was possible that my heart wasn't in the right place when I asked Jesus into it, or other things. So I was continuously doing these things and then getting rebaptized, and this time trying to get it right.
Was that something that people, like, was that really uncommon for someone to get baptized more than once?
It was not uncommon.
Okay,
people would get rebaptized. In fact, that was the term for it, rebaptized. Okay,
because in the church that I spent most of my childhood in, it was a pretty formal thing. And it's funny because it was, in a sense, it felt like almost like a requirement to be, a real Christian. It was like the prayer was the first step, and then the baptism was the second step.
Depending on the denomination and the group, baptism was a requirement. I mean, that's part of why there are so many different denominations and groups. Is actually baptism is one of those hot button topics. So I won't get too much into like the technicals of it, but
it's just interesting that, because it's not something I ever really thought about growing up. I would say the prayer all the time because I felt bad for not actually, I just really struggled with believing heaven was real and hell was real. And so I would say the prayer over and over again, just in case I didn't get it right the last time, or, things like that. Because
did you ever panic about younger siblings as they developed between like ages 1 and 6, wondering what was the exact moment where they had enough comprehension to be required by God to say the prayer, and then panicking that there's going to be like 5 minutes of them not being safe and dying in a car accident?
So the thing about that was, I said the prayer the first time when I was like 2. It was a pretty early thing that we all did with mom and dad, I think.
Yep.
And I don't really know how it started, because it never seemed like it was like, it's time for you to say the prayer or anything like that. But it'd almost be like, they kind of lead us. Yeah.
Prompty, like, hey, so like my parents would do it like this. They would kind of do they'd sometimes draw on like a paper and be like, on this side of the cliff is where we are with our sin. Do you ever do bad things? And like kind of talk that way, and then say, and then over here, and they draw a different cliff, like with a ravine in between. This is common. Actually, I don't remember who first did this, but they would say like, and this is the other cliff. And this is where God's standards are and everything. And what happens if you try to walk across that cliff? And you'd be like, you fall down, kind of a thing. And they're like, that's right. And then they would draw a cross, long ways. Exactly what you're talking that was about. The bridge. Yeah. And they would say, but with Jesus, you can walk across this bridge and get to the other side. And it was like, but what you have to do is ask Jesus into your heart. And in your heart, you have to be, and they would talk through like the requirements and say like, would you like to do that? And of course you're like, yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to go to the bad place. I mean, it's kind of like with our kids. Our son was vomiting not too long ago, and his little sister kind of passed by the bathroom and saw that, and she was just kind of staring at him throwing up. And I said, "Don't look at that. It's going to make you throw up. If you look at him, it's going to make you throw up."
Yeah.
And she then became scared that looking at her brother would make her throw up.
Yeah.
Like, period. Like, that was a thing. Like, from now on, if I look at him, I will throw up. So she started running away from him and stuff. And I had to get her and be like, no, you misunderstand.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was kind of the same thing a lot of times with those early evangelical things as a kid. It was just like, do you want to go to hell?
Yeah, the answer is very obvious.
We're like, no.
Yeah.
I will, if you told me at that point to do jumping jacks and sing, Mary Had a Little Lamb 3 times in a row in order to not go to some place where I'm on fire, I would have done it on the spot. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, I think most of my siblings, asked Jesus into their heart, said the prayer. I think before they were 3, probably. So it wasn't really a thing of like, oh, so-and-so still hasn't asked, Jesus into their heart or something like that, where we were actively worried about that. But I'm sure it would have been a thing if, if I'd had a sibling who was 9 and still hadn't said the prayer or something like that, know?
Yeah, I remember just being super anxious about one of my younger sisters.
Okay.
When she was little and like waking up with almost night terrors and being worried because she hadn't said the prayer yet or done it. And I was just so scared anytime we got in the car, anytime anything happened to her, like get hurt a little bit, I would just kind of panic and have almost a meltdown because I was just like, she's going to go to hell.
Yeah. How old were you when you
had feelings like that?
No,
for the first time.
When you said the prayer for the first time.
I don't even remember it.
You don't remember,
but I was told that I was like 4.
Okay. Was that generally the age that a lot of you guys did?
Young.
Yeah.
It was pretty standard.
Yeah.
To be very, very young.
Yeah.
And there was definitely fear of hellfire though. I mean, I think when I said that I was worried about my little sister, to be clear, I wasn't a little boy, like a tiny little boy. I was like 12.
Yeah.
And having those kinds of feelings. Very, very scared of that sort of thing. So anyway, the journal, I was making plans. I was like ready to go. I was ready to go. And I'm at the very last pages of my journal, but I talk about more conversations with her that were happening every Sunday at this point, and just being like, she seemed to like it. And then just not sure why, but like after a couple of those, I remember her like staying away from me more.
Okay.
And just, she was always so busy. It was almost like there's no time ever to talk to her. It was really difficult. And I would have loved to have helped. I actually think I remember even offering to help like in the kitchen or do some of the things that she was busy doing because it would give us time to talk together.
Yeah.
And I think I actually remember the women in the church being like, no, this isn't something you should be doing. And I do remember Michelle pulling her away. So beyond the journal here for a minute, like as far as how the whole Jana thing ended up and concluded, I asked Jim Bob if I could. I went for it. I shot my shot, so to speak. and I said, can I write her letters? Can we write letters back and forth? I just want to get to know her. I didn't even ask for courtship at that point, but like I was just like, can we write each other? And I kind of told asked my dad if he'd be willing to ask Jim Bob this, because I felt that was the best way to do it at the time, which is kind of funny. It's almost like your manager, like your Hollywood manager. It's like, hey, did he read the script yet? It's like, I don't know. I gave it to him, but it's like you got these two managers talking to each other. But like, I asked and I waited. I was on just pins and needles. Waiting. I was just like, please, let's just have this be a thing. And Jim Bob told me she didn't want to. And And I accepted that. I really did. I was like, I mean, you could tell from the journal and everything. I liked her to the point that I wanted what was best for her.
Mm-hmm.
And truly, truly got it.
Yeah.
And moved on. And it was like, okay, it's time to find somebody else that I can talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I did find that person
mm-hmm.
who I did court and
mm-hmm.
correspond with. And those are that's a whole nother thing. The letters that we wrote back and forth.
Courtship.
A courtship that was happening as I was losing my belief in
mm-hmm.
the things that were around me, which was interesting because it was basically our relationship falling apart because I was realizing that I couldn't be with her because she was in one place and I was in another.
Mm-hmm.
I was kind of crumbling away from her in real time, even though I still felt things, and to a certain degree, you know, really affectionate towards her. It was just like the ground I was standing on, even within courtship and everything else, was just crumbling beneath my feet. And I couldn't even share those things with her.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm sure every negative thing you were feeling about yourself was compounded by feeling like the foundation was crumbling underneath you, you know, which I'm sure made it harder to connect or feel like you were worthy of someone else or, you know.
Well, the one thing with my parents was we were, and a lot of fundamentalist kids were encouraged to bring everything to your mom and dad.
Yes.
Everything goes to mom and dad. You don't go talk to this other person about what you're feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It's all mom and dad. They are the place. And so I was also struggling there too, because I was having these feelings of like, this isn't real, or this doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like logically. I was starting to have some higher order thought kind of examinations about the Bible
mm-hmm.
and about the accuracy of things. I was starting to listen to things like Ray Comfort and Ken Ham or other people and just kind of going like, oh dear.
Yeah.
It wasn't that I was mad. There's this caricature that a lot of people paint, especially in fundamentalist circles, that you have to get mad at God and be bitter at him to run away from him.
And it's completely thoughtless.
Yeah. And it's based on bitterness. It's based on like, you're mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
I was not mad at God.
Mm-hmm.
I was actually trying to hold on to him.
Mm-hmm.
And my brain was literally ripping me while I'm holding on as tight as I can to some of the things that were around me.
Mm-hmm.
For example, the Ken Ham stuff. A lot of his logical fallacies and stuff that he was throwing up, at just a certain age, they just stopped working on me. And they just stopped working for me. I was like, and part of this is because of my hyper focus. I would be like, he would say something, I'd be like, awesome, let's dig into that. And I would like really dig in deep, kind of beyond what I was told. And I'd be like, there are some problems in here. I wonder if Ken Ham knows about this.
Gosh, I remember going to Ken Ham conferences.
Or with Ray Comfort, I'd be like, I wonder if he knows that his aggressive tactics might trick people into thinking and feeling things that they don't mean. And I was like, I wonder if he knows that. Maybe somebody should tell him. I feel like if you were gentler and more honest, that it would be a little bit more of a complex dialogue. And I started just feeling like, oh, some of these things are kind of tricky.
Was it him that was producing the tracks?
Yes.
With like the angry, God-hating professors?
I don't know about him. There were chick tracks.
Okay.
That are insane.
Yeah.
They're one of the most insane things that you can read on this planet.
Yeah.
Are chick tracks. And I'm sorry, but like, I mean, this should not be offensive to Christians or anything like that, because these things are legit insane.
Yeah.
Like, they're nuts. But yeah, the Duggars had a lot of chick tracks. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if Ray Comfort gave those out or if he had his own, but some of his were kind of ish. Like, I think he had the ones that was like the $5 million bill or like the $1,000 bill or whatever it was that you would leave as like a tip where you're like, for your food,
gosh.
Where you'd be
I've
like,
seen those.
And I'm sorry if this was not Ray Comfort and I'm like attributing something to him that is not him. Apologies if he actually hates this or something. I'm not exactly sure. who did what here.
I remember this one, though.
But there was like $100 bill or something like that. And people would like leave it with their tip or sometimes in plate as their tip.
So
they'd be like, you wanted $5? How about eternal salvation? It's the greatest tip of all.
Oh my gosh. It's horrendous.
And it looks like $100 bill until you flip it over. And then it's kind of like, do you know what's better than $100? It's so bad. It's so it makes me horrible. Laugh.
Like it's such, and bless their hearts. I'm sure a lot of people that left these, you know, like felt like it was coming from a good place, and you know, I'm doing something really good here. But if you to really be on the receiving end of that is it's such a
slap in the face,
dickish thing. Yeah,
honestly. And it was bad. It was really, really bad. But yeah, what was your question about Ray Comfort? He came up somehow. I don't remember.
Oh, well, I just asked about the,
if he was the chick track guy.
Yeah, basically the one.
I don't think he was, but he had some tracks that I remember being less than awesome.
Yeah.
But he was the street evangelical guy. I think my dad got pissed off at him when he met him because he was like, Ray, I love everything that you're doing. Oh my gosh, like you've made such an impact. You're such a great guy. And I think Ray Comfort just kind of like squinted at him and went, do you consider yourself to be a good person? And Dad was like, no, not me. Not me. I'm one of you. No. And he was like, have you accepted Jesus as your savior? And Dad just like, no.
Oh my gosh.
You know, he was like, I'm on your side.
It is a weird thing to go from being the person that's, you know, trying to evangelize to others or witness to others to being the heathen that people are witnessing to.
Well, because a lot of witnessing and evangelical tactics are not super deep or heartfelt. They can be very surfacey. And so when you're somebody who has left certain things, first of all, there's like this assumption that you're in a place that you're not in terms of like, you don't like Jesus or you don't like God or you're mad at them. It's like, it's going to fall on his face because like, you really need to take the time to understand where the other person's at before you just start kind of throwing jargon at them. Because like, not everybody is just mad at God. Not everybody's doing the whole, well, if God's real, how come there's cancer thing?
Yeah.
That's not where everybody's at. And it's not where I was at. So I was definitely falling away from my faith very slowly. And the point I was making about my parents and talking to them was that another struggle for me too was going to my parents and trying to talk about these things, because I think that the things that I said were so hard to answer.
Yeah.
That they were almost just like, don't think about those things. Because I would get into something and say like, well, hey, focus on the family published this concordance. So it's a good source, but it goes over into some weaknesses in the book of James and Revelations in terms of their accuracy.
Yeah.
And I'm confused that we in church say things like every jot and tittle is inspired by God, but how does that work with translation? How does that work with the efficacy of handing things down from person to person? How does that work with the fact that these are manuscripts and copies of manuscripts and copies of manuscripts? We don't have the originals in some cases, or how some of our oldest manuscripts, like the African Common Bible manuscript, had different books in it than this one, than that one. And there'd be committees of people who would kind of decide what was in the Bible. There would be edits and additions and retractions. And I said, and this isn't just like an evolutionist God hater saying these things. Yeah. It's actually in Strong's Concordance, or it's in this commentary. And is this just a dirty little secret that Bible scholars believe, but somehow we sheeple can't think about?
Yeah.
I was like, why is our message so simple? But the reality is so complex. And I'm a boy who's neurodiverse. I want complexity. Yeah. If I love God, I'm going to read everything.
Yeah.
And their answer was, don't think about it. And that didn't work for me because I didn't know how to love this stuff and not think about it. And so I was finding that just fundamentalism was just falling apart for me quickly and rapidly while I was courting this other girl. I remember one time she wrote me after I sent kind of a jokey, fun letter, even though I was struggling. She was just like, "What is wrong with you?"
Mm-hmm.
And she was like, what is going on with you? And I was like, and she was saying all these things and just like clearly upset. And I was like, you don't know. You don't know the quicksand that is dragging me in beneath my feet. And I don't even know how to share it with you.
Yeah.
Because who do you go to with these questions?
Yeah.
Because the parlor trick stops. They can't just say, don't think about that at a certain point. You know, even things like Ken Ham, it's supposed to be like answering the tough questions for teens.
Yeah.
And it was like, these aren't tough questions.
Yeah.
This is like, did Eve have a belly button type stupid stuff? It was like, you kidding me?
Well, and oftentimes you hit a wall too of, well, we're not supposed to understand this.
God's ways are higher than our ways.
Yeah.
And then I would start to fall apart in my mind too, because I was like, okay, I got it. But then I was like, but how does this work? Because this sounds a lot like what other religions say. And I was trying to make like a single unified theory of everything that lined up and didn't have fallacies or inconsistencies philosophically. And just, I couldn't do it. It was like trying to fold a fitted sheet. It's just I couldn't get it to all line up, even though I wanted to. So like, and the funny thing is like nowadays, if I just say that it's complicated, or I'm not a literal believer, or I'm a non-believer, or I'm a sort of kind of atheist, but I don't really know. If I say that to people, they kind of just come at me with these very easy things. And I'm like, no, I want somebody to dive in and not be afraid of the truth.
Yeah.
Like, can we not act like we can't open certain doors with our questions?
Yeah. Well, and if anything, like when I was really questioning everything, I wasn't mad at Jesus or something like that. I was mad at myself for not believing these things, because I wanted to be able to picture heaven in my mind and really believe that I was going to go there someday. And I wanted to believe, these different things and be completely bought in. And I was upset that I wasn't, and yeah, it is really hard, because it's like, who are you supposed to talk to about that?
I would go get the hardest hitting Christian apologetics books that I could find that were like answering the tough questions. And I found that, they just didn't work for me.
Yeah.
They didn't go there all the way.
Yeah.
And honestly, I kind of made an anthem for myself, even as a Christian boy in my late teens, early 20s, that I would pursue the truth wherever it went. No matter what it looked like, if it was scary or not scary, I was going to do it.
Yeah.
Because I thought, why does God want us to not see things that are real? So I went to Pensacola Christian College for a semester when I was 18. I turned 19 there on campus. So it was the fall semester. And when I was there, I dove into the Bible with ferocity and intensity that had never done before, haven't done since. We're talking 6-hour sessions of reading, praying, and just copious notes.
And this wasn't everything as part of your curriculum. This was
this was me.
Yeah.
We're talking, I would be in the school library, pulling every concordance, getting the history of everything. And I learned a trick that helped me a lot. And that was to not read the Bible verse by verse with all of the part A's and the part B's, and not to read it word by word. To not read the Bible with my face a quarter inch away from the page, but to back up, breathe, and read it like it was a volume. And I found that when I did that, the Old Testament started breaking down as literal. And it turned into almost campfire tales that were ancient. where this was something that was told from this person to this person. These were the meaningful stories that these people embraced.
Mm-hmm.
And they were poetically inaccurate,
Mm-hmm.
which is not what fundamentalism teaches.
Yeah.
It teaches you that every word is inspired by God. Ken Ham teaches you that everything really happened. These are the most solid historical documents ever.
Yeah.
But then you would read account of battles in some of the old things, and they would repeat the formula like a stanza.
Yeah.
They would say, and on this day, 3,000 people went in and died, and this happened, and they fell apart.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, they tried it again, and it was 3,000 people died, and it fell apart.
Yeah.
And I was like, if you read something like that in the New York Times, as far as like, hey, what's going on overseas at that war? And New York Times just came out with it and just said, well, on day 1, 5,000 people died. And on day 2, 6,000 people died. And on day 3, 7,000 people died. And they all danced saying, hooray. You would go, what am I reading? And why is Dr. Seuss in charge of the news all of a sudden?
Yeah.
But when I read it poetically and I read it like that, I realized I don't have to like what every person did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to agree with everything that happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and I don't have to think that God put this book in here for me to read today. It's okay if people put this book together. That doesn't mean it's not valuable. These are people who wanted to be close to God that bound this volume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And maybe we should put together another volume of books 200 years later or 300 years later.
Yeah.
And sort of all of the mystical elements that were used to explain every inconsistency just fell apart. And I just realized with clarity that for me, the Bible was an imperfect, beautiful volume meant to spiritually help me. And I believed in my heart that it was placed in my life for a reason at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted to get the goodness out of it. But instead of looking at people like David and Solomon as excuses for my own modern behavior,
Mm-hmm.
I looked at them as stories that were filtered through object lessons.
Yeah.
And preserved inaccurately, ornately for me. The other thing too is I realized that accuracy has to be a modern thing.
Yeah.
A modern requirement. Do you think people who were like sitting around a campfire telling stories of their granddad, do you think that they literally thought every word of that campfire story was accurate? No.
Yeah.
Why would it be? This is granddad talking about his family.
Mm-hmm.
In some ways, you feel the truth of it in your soul.
Mm-hmm.
You feel the love going through the words. You feel that the point is between the lines.
Yeah.
And for a boy who really struggles with subtext, I put in the work to find the subtext of the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And what I found for myself was that there was a lot of beauty there. And I began to believe that if you looked around you in the world, you could find God.
Yeah.
That God wasn't this big angry man in the sky judging me for everything. That was actually just a bunch of abusive people with puppet strings trying to gain some control.
Mm-hmm.
I found out that God was in the trees, in my heart, in the book that was in front of me, in my friends, in the ice cream that made me smile, in the music I listened to. And those things don't hate me. They don't want me to burn. And I came to peace with the fact that anybody in this world has access to that.
Yes.
And can celebrate it in their own way. And that it was beautiful. And I related to the words of Jesus like I never had before. I realized that walking the narrow road didn't mean being part of a cult.
Mm-hmm.
It meant believing what was in your heart.
Mm-hmm.
Even if other people rejected you for it.
Mm-hmm.
And that finding your truth was what I was supposed to do. And what everybody else was supposed to do too.
Yep.
And I realized that the best thing you can do in this world is to not agonize over whether you're right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And to not worry so much about whether you're sinning or not sinning, or whether it's okay to say fuck or to not say fuck,
Mm-hmm.
or to not worry about who you love,
Mm-hmm.
or what the rules are, or what that guy says, or if he frowns at you or hits you, or if you're scared, that it was okay to be you.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt more alone with that message of hope than I ever did anywhere else, because I excitedly ran back to everybody I knew with what I felt like was the good news.
Mm-hmm.
That you didn't have to feel like shit anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And people just turned to me and said, okay, but did you read your Bible today, and how's your walk with God? And they said, you're probably just having a crisis of faith. Why don't you come back to church? And join us. And I said, no, I'll be alone. And the greatest comfort that I had when I was alone in my young 20s was knowing that even though the road is narrow, and even though the road is lonely, that I can walk it. And I used those horrible metaphors for isolation and flipped them in the most beautiful way. And it got me through.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? I don't want a career out of this. That's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
This hurts.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I want? I want people who hurt to be free.
Yep.
I'm going to read a passage from my journal that's kind of heavy. It's going to take me a minute to find it. So bear with me here. Okay, I found it. I'm a little torn on reading this because it's talking about my struggles with my mother and how it made me feel. And I know that my mom might listen to this at some point. And I don't want her to feel bad. And I also don't want people to judge my mom, because this was a struggle with a boy who really was dependent on others being overt with him in order to know how they felt. And when I didn't know, it was almost like there was a black cloud over him blocking my view. And I had to figure out or guess how they felt. And sometimes when I was sad, my guess would be horribly wrong in the depressive direction.
Yeah.
And, so this is my kind of outpouring at one point. I'm having a rough day. Mom loves me. This I do not doubt. But I don't think Mom likes me. If I was a boy she had met and she got to know me well, she would not like me. She has motherly, natural affection for my position as son, but she doesn't like my philosophy. Why doesn't she talk with me? I know talking is not her love language, but couldn't she try to talk to me for the sake of communicating love to me? No, she just doesn't see me fit to do that. I don't think she thinks about trying to love on me, especially. The love I usually get from Mom is service, and it is given in equal shape to all the kids. I wish she would shape her love for me in a way that I would know was meant just for me. I realize she does this for me sometimes, especially if I am displaying a good attitude and character, but I yearn for her to continuously show her love to me, even when I'm showing my rotten side. Am I asking for a mother I do not have? If so, I regret my uncontentment for her. But if she is able to love me in a way that is personal to me, and maybe even like me for my personality and for being me, I hope it will come while I still have years to soak it in. Mm. My heart yearns for love to lap up thirstily, like a dog would lap up water after a long journey. The thought of a loving wife laying her head on my shoulder, just loving me as I am, is a beautiful thought. The thought shattered as the words of wise Christians enter my mind. Your relationship with your wife will reflect your relationship with your mother. How chilling. I couldn't bear to interact with my wife the way that I have with my mom. And I couldn't live on this level of love I receive now when I'm a husband or father. I may not marry for the right reason. If the verse, the power of life and death are in the tongue, is to be interpreted literally, then might as well give up life from the curses that have been called on me. I can't vow this because I'm in a discouraged state of mind, but I may never marry. I'm discouraged so deeply. I quite literally would not be opposed to a natural death at this moment. I feel like I have no faith walk, no love, no family future. What would be my reason for existing? Friends are useless without faith, love, and intimacy. Pleasure gives me guilt and regret and has no remedy for the soul. Goals are fruitless, and I have no ambition in life without a family that's godly. Without love and faith, life should not be lived. I care too much about my reputation and my friends to end my life. I'm also too scared. A noble, natural death appeals to me, but I wish I could see the sorrow people would have for me after. I know people would love my memory, just not my true, unflattered, real presence. Justin. It's heavy. It's heavy. I felt that way a lot growing up.
Yeah.
And I know you had dark moments too.
Yep.
And I think that's why it's important to give people a message of worth and hope. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, I'm not trying to get people to leave God or their religion or change anything that is giving them joy and worth and truth. For me, my life now has boiled down to realizing that I don't get joy out of trying to get all the answers to everything all the time.
Yeah.
And that obsessing over what I do right and wrong just leads to bad things. And I found a real joy in almost being the human version of like a free range, farm animal, where it's like, like we joked about this, about Jon Stewart from The Daily Show, how he and his wife went on to just, after he retired from that, have a farm where they just get pigs and sheep and llamas and whatever else to just run around and be happy. Just let the sun shine on their little bellies and just live. And that's kind of what I want to be. I mean, if Jon Stewart listens to this and wants to adopt you and I to be free range, animals on his compassionate farm, if they want to bring us out like food every day while we lay in the sun,
oh my gosh,
I mean, I could do that probably for the rest of my days. But yeah, in a way, that's kind of what I do now, is like, I'm not trying to be a philosopher or get all the right answers on stuff now.
Yeah.
Honestly, I like those little ice cream cookie sandwiches. Those make me happy. I like
watching The Bachelor together.
I like watching The Bachelor.
Yeah.
I like Snuggles. I have other obsessions that I do besides whether I'm going to hell. Like, I love spaceships, I started playing video games like 2 years ago. And honestly, I'm like a teenager now with that stuff. I'm just like, oh, Mom, just 5 more minutes. I haven't beat my high score yet. As a 30-something-year-old dad, I'm like discovering all these kid things that I didn't do when I was a kid, and they're just gold for my personality. And I love it. I'm just being a happy little piglet over here, like, that's what I do. And that's why we're ending this podcast now, because like at a certain time, you just have to say your story, get it out there, give people that message of hope, and then go on to just being that happy camper. Life isn't all about money. It's not all about fame. It's not all about power. I sometimes look at little animals that are just living their best life and are happy to just do whatever their species does. Cats happy doing cat stuff. Dog's happy doing dog stuff. I want to be a human who's happy being human and doing human stuff.
Yep.
And that's where I'm at. And honestly, that's what I want everybody to do.
Yep.
At the end of the day.